Is Lisa as powerful as she is knowledgeable? Well, the short answer is no, but the long answer is a bit different. So stay tuned to find out. Okay, so the question is, who is Lisa? Lisa is basically a librarian in the city of Mondstadt, and that is basically it. Another thing about her is she is considered as the best student in the University of Sumeru for the last 200 years. So basically speaking, when it comes to knowledge related stuff, she is extremely knowledgeable, but when it comes to her vision, she is actually extremely afraid of her own vision. Like, she doesn't even understand how this process work, or let's just say she is extremely afraid because all the power she had gotten, she doesn't know what are the cost of this power. Okay, now in case of her ranking, she is considered a C rank character, and she is also considered as a sub DPS. Now you can get this information from the following website, which is called game8.co, to actually know which type of ranking each character are and what are their attack pattern. Okay, and in case if you're wondering that how many people uses her usage rate is actually 1.6%. now the thing is, 100% of the players, okay, like there are 15,000 players who have registered their account there to let the website know how many people actually uses which type of character to actually finish the spiral abyss. Okay, and from that point of perspective, Lisa's usage rate is 1.6%, extremely low. Now why this happened, I will try my best to actually explain that. So let's talk about her overall talent. So from this talent you will be able to understand why she is not considered as the best type of sub DPS character in the game. Now first of all, let's talk about her normal attack. Now her normal attack isn't that much great, because as you can see here, overall her normal attack are extremely low, and only her charge attack is extremely high. So when you compare these to any other characters with similar levels, you will definitely see that Lisa is not that much strong in this damage dealing category. Okay, and when it comes to this violet art must need to be used in two following manners to actually execute it properly. First of all, you must need to hit enemies up to 3 times to get a max of 3 stacks, and once that max of 3 stacks happen, then what will you do is you hold this elemental skill, and once you hold this elemental skill, then it will do a lightning damage, electro damage, and this electro damage will be multiplied by 682%, or let's say 594, or let's say 515. Now the more powerful it will get, the more the stack there is on the enemy. So after you use violet arc on an enemy up to 3 times, and then you press on this elemental skill, only then she will be able to do a massive quantity of damage on the enemy. Okay, now let's talk about this lightning rose. So what does this lightning rose does is, it basically provides a sub DPS type of buff for your main DPS character, and will help the main DPS character do a large quantity of elemental reaction. Now in case if you're wondering, okay, how do I know that? Well, the thing is, it has a duration of 15 seconds. So if an elemental burst has a duration of 15 seconds, then it is definitely used for sub DPS purpose only. Okay, so from that point of perspective, she is actually considered as a one of the early sub DPS character in the game. So if you have her at the beginning, obviously you are going to be using this lightning rose a lot more than violet arc. Okay, now this thing, I actually do not know how this works, so I'm not gonna even try to explain, but let me talk about this one. So the thing is, when you increase our experience ranking, okay, opponents hit by lightning rose, this is the lightning rose, have their defense decreased by 15% for 10 seconds. So basically speaking, if after you activate this lightning rose, the enemy will lose their defense percentage, okay, which is a very good thing at the beginning of the game, because you must need to understand how the elemental reaction works and debuff works. Otherwise you're gonna have a hard time to actually fully grasp the main power of this game, and that is elemental reaction. Okay, now the last one is called general pharmaceutics. Pharmaceutics, I do not know how to pronounce it properly. So basically speaking, what happens is, whenever Lisa try to make any type of potions, she will have a 20% chance to refund a portion of the crafting material used. So whatever the amount it takes, you will get about some amount of it back, and the percentage of you getting those some of those item back is gonna be up to 20%. So that is basically her talent. Okay, now let's talk about her constellation. Now when it comes to constellation, she has only 3 constellations which are very important, which is constellation 1, 2 and 4. Okay, so without further ado, let me explain about them. So when it comes to this constellation 1, what happens is Lisa will produce 2 energy when you hit the enemies with violet arc. So basically speaking, if there are, let's say, up to 5 enemies around you, and Lisa were to hit those 5 enemies with her violet arc, then basically speaking she will be able to produce up to 10 energy, which is a very good thing, because when it comes to her main sub DPS part, it basically comes from her elemental burst and not her elemental skill. So obviously having this activated is a very good thing. Okay, now this one is called electromagnetic field. So what does this electromagnetic field does is basically make her immune to attack up to a certain percentage. Okay, basically speaking, whenever you try to use Lisa's hold skill, it doesn't actually work properly. But if you were to have this activated, then she can use her violet arc, the hold, and will still be able to perform it better and will not get interrupted by enemies attack. So from that point of perspective, this is a very good constellation. Now what about constellation 4? Now basically speaking, when you use Lisa's elemental burst, she will be able to provide 1 hit on 1 enemies at a time. But at constellation 4, the elemental burst, which is called the lightning rose, will be able to hit up to 3 opponents at a time. So basically speaking, up to 3 enemies will be affected by this lightning rose. And what happens when the enemies get hit by the lightning rose? Their defense decreases by 15% for 10 seconds. So from that point of perspective, this constellation 4 is actually a very good option if you can get it, because it is actually not possible to get Lisa very easily. Basically speaking, I did several hundred pulls, right? Out of those several hundred pulls, I only got 1 Lisa. Okay, I got only 2 Lisa 0 and Lisa C1. So obviously it is very hard to get up to constellation 4. Now what about constellation 6? Now when it comes to the constellation 6, is when you basically put Lisa on the battlefield, Lisa will automatically make the opponents near her take up to 3 stacks of violent arc. Okay, so obviously this is something that is not going to be very much useful, because as I've already said, Lisa is more of a sub DPS character, and her sub DPS parts come from the lightning rose, which is the elemental burst and not the elemental skill. Okay, now when it comes to her sub DPS part, obviously she is gonna be a sub DPS part in majority of your main gameplay. So this is the main party which I use on a regular basis. So if I were to change any of the character, obviously I use Sayu for traveling only or for collecting materials. So if I were to change Sayu to actually this Lisa, then Lisa will be able to provide superconduct. Now the thing is superconduct worth it? Actually no. Superconduct versus electrocharge. Electrocharge can do actually a much more elemental reaction than superconduct. So from that point of perspective, she is not actually a very good option in a cryo dominant team. Okay, so from that point of perspective, using Lisa in this manner is actually a very stupid thing to do. Now in case if you're wondering, okay, what if I were to remove this Kamisato Ayaka with, let's say, Diluc? Okay, then this one is going to be a very good option, because Explode is a lot more powerful when you compare it with superconduct. So from that point of perspective, if you have this team, then this team will be able to do a large quantity of damage to the enemies. Okay, now in case for any other people out there who just want to use Lisa for a, what should I call it, for a main DPS, then this is another option which I suggest. Okay, now let's say these are the following characters which you are gonna get at the beginning part of your game, because these are basically free to play characters which you will eventually get at higher ranking, okay, or on higher adventure rank. So from that point of perspective, if you were to use Lisa as a main DPS character in the game, then this is one of the team. Now the thing is, this is actually not that much practical, because there is problem when you get hit by enemy, and it basically stops your main sub DPS character to perform any type of elemental skill or elemental burst. So from that point of perspective, as I've said, superconduct is not that much useful. You can definitely remove Kaya and put uh, where is Noel? You can definitely put Noel in this category. So basically speaking, at this point what will happen is you will at least have shield, you will have explode, and you will have super electro charge. So from that point of perspective, this is actually a far better team just by removing Kaya. Okay, now let's talk about this team. Okay, so this is basically the very useful team. Okay, and the reason behind that is both of these two are basically gonna be considered as a sub DPS. Okay, and this one is basically a support. Basically this one provides you with a higher damage dealing, whereas these two basically are good for their elemental reaction. Now the thing is, okay, this team looks good, but the problem is I do not see any type of shield character in this game, okay, in this party. Now the question is, if you do not have a shield character in this party, then the question is, who should you remove? Now this is my point of view. Okay, so if I already have a character who will be able to do explode or overload, okay, on the enemies by using Shanglin and Lisa, then obviously using Bennett is not gonna be a very good option. Why? Because Bennett, even though he can provide a lot of damage buff, the problem is Lisa is not that type of character to actually do a large quantity of damage on her own. She must need to use elemental reaction. So from that point of perspective, if I remove this Bennett with this Noel, then obviously this team is gonna be a far better option. Now the question is, why do I not change any of these other characters with a 5-star character? Well, the thing is, 5-star characters are very hard to get, okay, and they do not come on a regular basis. They come once and every 6 months. So obviously for any new players, getting a 5-star in this type of support is gonna be extremely difficult for any new players to actually enjoy the game. So from that point of perspective, I highly suggest that you use this team instead of any other 5-star character in the team, because the other 5-star character in the team is going to be a very hard option for many players. Okay, now as you probably saw from the fight, that when I compared this team versus this team, obviously this team is a far more better option, because Shinkyu is capable of doing sub DPS of damage dealing, whereas for characters such as Barbara is basically a healer character in the game. So obviously she will not be able to do a massive quantity of damage as much as the character called Shinku is capable of doing. So obviously this character set is a very good set at the beginning part of your gameplay. Okay, Okay, now let's talk about what is the best weapon and the artifact set for Lisa. Okay, now in order for me to actually explain this, I must need to go to a certain website. Now you can go to this website which is called gamewith.net, and you can search on Lisa, okay, regarding of which type of weapon you should be giving her. Now the first one I will be talking about is the electro DPS. So if you want to use her as a electro DPS, then obviously giving her this lost prayer to the second is the best option. Now obviously this is a 5-star weapon, so getting this 5-star weapon is not gonna be that much easy. So from that point of perspective, the secondary option is called the solar pearl, but the problem is you must need to be using at least $10 or maybe $20 to actually get this, because you can only get that from these battle points. Okay, so in order for you to actually get this battle point, you must need to use at least 10 or maybe $20 to actually activate it. So from that point perspective, if you are a free-to-play player, then the solar pearl is also not gonna be a very good option. But what about Mappa Mire? Now if you want to use Mappa Mire, obviously this one is a grindable. If you have a billet, obviously you can use this, use the billet as a sacrificial in order to get this Mappa Mire. Okay, now when it comes to the artifact set, the best artifact set for Lisa as a DPS character is the Thundering Fury set. Okay, now this Thundering Fury set, you need to get at least all 4 of these to actually full take, in order for you to take full advantage of it. That is point number 1. Now what about point number 2? Now for point number 2 is, when it comes to the main stat and the subsets, these are the following. Now in order for you to actually make her into a, what should I call it, DPS character, the main stats are gonna be attack percentage, electro damage bonus, and critical damage or critical rate. Now I suggest that you go with the critical damage, because you must need to be getting your critical rate from the substats and not the main stats. Okay, now when it comes to the substats, these are the following stats that you must need to have, okay, in order to make her even more stronger. Now obviously the substats are more critical when you compare the substats against the main stats, so obviously you can get her as much as possible. I do not recommend that go to the maximum, rather go as much as you can. Okay, now if you want to use Lisa as a part support sub DPS, okay, then obviously from that point of perspective, these are the following items you should be giving her instead, such as thrilling tales of dragon slayers and 4 pieces of noblesse oblige. Okay, now the reason behind that is obviously the 4 pieces of noblesse oblige is gonna increase the party members attack percentage up to 20% for 12 seconds. Okay, and obviously in case of the artifact stats, the artifact base stats is gonna be in the following manner, such as attack, elemental mastery, and attack. Okay, this is basically what it is written here, and I do not know, maybe I think maybe it is from my point of view, I think it would be better to give her 2 elemental mastery and then give her the normal attack percentage. Okay, and when it comes to the substats, obviously having more elemental mastery and energy recharge is gonna be a very good option for Lisa, because Lisa, when she is gonna be a burst sub DPS character, obviously from that point of perspective, having excess amount of energy recharge is gonna be a very good option. Okay, so overall, what is my conclusion on the following characters such as Lisa? Well, because she is considered as a C rank sub DPS character, obviously many people who want to do a large quantity of damage to the enemies is not gonna be using her on a regular basis. I think she finally needs to get some breaks from the Knights of Fabulous roles and just sit down on the libraries for the rest of her life. And I think that is actually not very bad, because despite how she looks, giving her a soldier role is actually a very bad thing for her.